One of the resources that's been tremendously helpful for our students and even for our staff and myself to think through was Ian Murray's book, Revival and Revivalism. That resource, it was recommended to me by a good friend to read earlier this year. And as I'm reading through it, especially as I get into the portion, because he outlines authentic spirit-wrought revival and what was happening in the 18th century and the early 19th century. And then he comes to revivalism and what happens and how that starts to get twisted, because revival was so sought after. These men had good motives, and I think that's where church planting movements, disciple-making movements, you're not questioning the motives of these brothers. They truly are after good things, but the methodology employed to put the Spirit into the position of, okay, this is how we will generate revival. Exact same thing that was happening in the 18th and 19th century happening today. I think one of the most important books on missions today is Revival and Revivalism, just because the concept is exactly the same. Methodologies will lead to growth. Methodologies will lead to faster conversions, more churches planted, movements heading out. It's just replace movement with revival, and you've got the same thing going on. It's a really important resource, I think, for church leaders to read, to understand this could be our members. If we're not watching what they're doing as they head overseas, our members could subtly get sucked into this. Because who doesn't want to see growth? Who doesn't want to see hundreds, thousands of converts, churches planted? But at what cost? What are we really getting? And that's the real scare of it, is that we're going to end up with results that I think in another 10, 20 years, these are going to be places we're going to have to go back into, maybe 50 years. And right now, even trying to find these church planting movements overseas. I was with a brother over in India who is an Indian who speaks the language, and as he went around from location to location, funded by an organization, find these movements, still has yet to find one. And it's just, this is a lot of smoke and mirrors that's not going to end up producing long-term fruit to the glory of God in any context. Much the opposite, actually.
And by the way, the revivalism of the 19th century becomes, I think, in the 20th century, what is the seeker-sensitive church growth movement. And the church growth movement is a kind of mechanistic way to guarantee certain numbers. The desire is to reach people, and you don't blame them or fault them for that desire, but the method is that we can somehow mechanistically put together something that guarantees particular kinds of results and numbers. That's then just carried over globally into missions, that we can do the same thing. And I think that same story, if you will, of where the church is not interested in waiting on the Holy Spirit to do His work through His ordinary means, that same story is just being kind of recycled under different garb over and over and over again. 19th century, 20th century in the missions world. And so, yeah, I think Ian Murray's book, Revival and Revivalism, is incredibly helpful to addressing that, because it's just an old thing in new dress that we're dealing with.